stay tuned because at the end of this video, we're going to show you the carnage that's inside of that thing.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
The oil pan leads us to believe that there's some pretty nasty things inside of that block. So, all right, we're going to do that, taking you guys on this magical journey to the promised land.
Candy Mountain.
It's magical little Pleurodon, Charlie. Charlie.
You take a picture of this?
No, but I took a picture of your mom.
Did your camera zoom out that far? I should say that. Mom,
wow.
watching. I love you.
Yeah, that's gonna be our first dislike on these videos.
All the negative comments from my mom just bitching.
Donald, I raised you better than that. So this is how people type, apparently, in our comments. YouTube commenters are just, I don't know what I'm doing.
She works on, she types all day, so I'm sure she's got like the proper form and all that kind of crap.
Yeah. What is the proper form?
You lift your wrist up and then you gotta like that.
Like what?
Like that. What are you doing? Hey, you don't have a mic on.
I don't. We're doing this micless, so I'll actually turn this off so everyone can hear what I'm doing.
Technically, we do everything micless because we don't have a mic that works in here.
Like a boom mic.
Yeah.
So I've got a little bit of a cold, so that's why I'm sounding a little nasally. But we're because we don't have a 14 millimeter hex for taking the caps off to get the wrist pins out. We're gonna make a tool. So if you take a 3/8 bolt, the head of it is actually 14 millimeters. So if you're in a bind and you happen to have a ton of hardware laying around like we do, because we keep pretty much everything that's worth keeping, just grab yourself a 14 millimeter, or excuse me, a 3/8, and that will get you there. It'll be the same size. So what you do is you use this is the head, that's 14 millimeter hex. This side you're going to want to grab some kind of a nut and you'll actually weld it onto this shaft. And then what you do is you'll take a socket essentially and you're going to put that on this side because this is nice and machined and it's nice and tight. You don't want to try and use the nut. Weld this on nice and solid. That's what I'm going to do next, and then once it's cool we're going to use that to pop these caps out. Alright, done make some noise, some sparks. So, once they loosen up, once they cool down, because you can see it's glowing hot, then we'll get to use it. Should be pretty interesting. We've got, you guys heard it because I've got that clip. we got it to the point where the case is now like kind of opening itself up. We got everything, all the bolts out of it, and it's actually moving. At this point, you got to remove access covers, and then you have to pull out the wrist pins. So we do that, and then we're able to pop one of the sides off, and then we'll have to flip it over, do the other thing. But we're pretty excited to see the carnage within. What I'm thinking we'll probably do is we'll split the one half off of this thing, and then we'll actually disconnect the wrist or the connecting rod caps off, and then we'll just drop it all at the bottom of it, so we don't actually have to mess with the other case. So those will come out as a full piece. It's come out so easily.
At least this did. They should though. Should be most of it soon.
There we go.
That works.
Yep.
You get to all the things now?
Yep, now we can access that cap. See how slick this thing works? It's right in there, just snug as heck. You just gotta toss your 17 on. And there she goes. Pops right out.
Yay.
Okay. Now we can access the two wrist pins. Alright, so the next step is we're going to remove the circlips on the wrist pins. They're for the wrist pins, they're on the pistons. So, a little bit of a battle. Try to get them lined up. Generally, you want to use an actual... okay, well, it's in the motor somewhere, so I'll have to pluck that out later, but it did pop out. There we go. That's what your circlip looks like. Hammer for... Alright, so... you can either, try your own process for removing the wrist pins, whether that's you try and make a tool with a little bit of a hook on it to sneak through the wrist pin and try and grab the back and pull it out, or or use a slide hammer like we've got. We lucked out. The smallest size of the slide hammer tip that we've got actually fits inside of the wrist pin. So the EJ25 and EJ22 apparently use these same style of wrist pins, which are, I guess, supposedly the easier ones. I think it's the EJ20 has some pretty unpleasant to remove wrist pins. I have no idea. I have never taken an EJ20 apart, but that's what the interwebs tell me, so it must be true. All right, now we're gonna do this, and hopefully it'll just slide right out. Hopefully. Famous last words. Booyah! So there we go, that is a wrist pin. Now for the other side, we're gonna rotate the motor and get everything lined up. And we'll either do the exact same process, or we might just be able to reach in from this side and just push it right out. We'll find out what it's like here in a moment. So what's working for us is to use a really long screwdriver and
See how you just kind of wedge it in there and push it out. So now we've got to try and get our screwdriver out of there. Ah, there we go. So that's the skinny on it. So in our case, one side it worked really nicely to use the slide hammer, and then on the opposite side use a real long screwdriver, and it fit in nicely, and we were able to just kind of tap it out. So now that we have removed the 2 wrist pins, it's time to pop the pistons out, and you know, we're ready to take this thing apart. In fact, at this point you can probably leave the pistons in and split the case, but either or, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it at this point. So I wonder if one of us needs to, we got a hammer right behind you there, we've got this guy, so we might need a combination.
Yep, I'm actually just gonna get down and dirty on this, and I'll hold.
I'm probably gonna need you prying on it more than anything.
Just like that.
Okay. Block is split. All right. Let's see.
Come on.
No. Yeah, it's a little wiggly.
Bounced up and down.
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
So I think we figured out what was causing the rod knock.
Okay, watch your fingers. Holy cow. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if there is any bearing left in there. And then, oh man.
Knock, knock.
Whoa.
Cylinder 2.
All right.
You just have to break it free.
Because I'm gonna just pop. I have to. All right.
Oh, the scoring on the crank.
Yeah. I don't think the crank would have survived this this one. Oh, yuck.
Dude.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's not supposed to look like that.
No, it's not. It's not. All right. Well, we better show the viewers at home. Okay, so we got to the bottom of it. You guys saw us splitting this thing apart. So this is what we were making all that noise about. So if you look at the bearing, how squished it all is. So what we had was the spinning, there were spinning bearings in there. So you can see how it's like crushed and widened out, and it's because it's actually overlapping. If I had to guess, it probably overlapped this direction. On top of it, bearings are not supposed to have a ledge on the side of them. They're not. They're supposed to be nice and flat and stay that way, and not, you know, press outward. And look at how nasty that is. Yeah. Okay. Oh god, you can see inside there's a lot of discoloration and scoring. So this is I mean, I've never seen a rod bearing with that much play in it, but I've actually seen ones where you've got heat marks on the connecting rod itself. So somehow this connecting rod actually, you could probably polish this out, honestly, and reuse this thing. I wouldn't, but you maybe could. All right, so we got a couple more to take apart here, and see how disgusting they are. And for you, this is what your bearing is supposed to look like. You can see it's also very scored. You don't want to see a lot of copper like that, or copper coloration. Here's your comparison. So yeah, this thing's a little screwed up, to say the least. All right, statement. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's the thrust bearings. Okay. I was like, what in the hell just fell out? All right.
Let's have some breathing.
Crank is out. And surprisingly, like, the crank is pretty nasty. Oh, yeah, no, that's not salvageable. That's real scored. This guy would need to get ground down. This would need to be turned and polished. That's pretty bad.
And that's your the other half.
Oh yeah. So let's see if we've got any cracked ringlands. No. Which is another common failure on these things. Yep.
Oh, is that one cracked?
Yep, there's a crack right there.
Yep.
So there's our crack. Right there. Yeah, so this thing was done for. So I guess really, like, what could have happened, I mean, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. We could have ended up with, you know, actual fractured pistons, bigger chunks flying around inside.
Broken a rod.
Exactly. With how bad that bearing was, it's kind of surprising it didn't let go. So we've got a pretty good wall of shame going here. I think we'll probably save this one and those bearings. Yeah, I think so.
At this point, you would get everything cleaned up, send everything off to the machine shop, and reassemble.
So we'll have to remember that this is the real toasted rod.
Yep.
Make sure nobody ever ends up with this thing. It might be salvageable, but again, I don't know. Why risk it with these things when you can buy new ones for like 70 bucks a pop?
Yep.
So, all right, there we go, guys. That's the disassembly. Really glad that we ended up doing this anyways, because it seems like this motor with a cracked ringland and the bearings are all looking a little bit toasted. This thing was on a pretty finite amount of time left, so it's a good thing that we got a whole new OE short block to put in there, because
that's a lot of metal shavings.
It is. This motor would have needed a lot of love. We would have definitely needed a new crank. It definitely would have needed to be bored out, because just based on the amount of scoring on these skirts, says there might be
fix the cylinders.
Not just a normal hone, probably not. When you got scoring this bad, it means that there might be ovaling inside of the cylinder, and that can also happen just with a lot of miles, because this says 186, so that can happen. You know, what's happening is your pistons are kind of being pushed. There's a lot of side loading on them because your crankshaft is what's moving. So if something's going up at an angle like this, it's creating a lot of side load on it, and that's why your skirts get scratched up, and that's why your piston's oval, or cylinder's oval. So that stuff can just happen with time, or it can happen with properly machined block, improperly rather. Too much piston wall clearance, you can have piston slap. That also causes more wear on the side of the cylinders. So a lot of things that can go wrong, but we got it all apart. So now we're down to the fun part.